Hello, I'm Kuldeep Singh. I'm a quality improvement lead at Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health Trust. I'm presenting as part of a series called QI Coffee Break Sessions, and today I'm presenting driver diagrams. I'll be covering three aspects in today's session, starting with what is a driver diagram? What does it look like? How do we use it for effective planning? Okay, let's start with the fundamentals of improvement work. In our trust, we use the model for improvement for all our improvement work. If you've already attended some of our QI training sessions, you must be acquainted with the model for improvement already. So it basically asks three questions followed by the PDSA cycle. I always love to call the PDSA cycle as the engine room of all the improvement work. Briefly, the model for improvement is a structured approach to testing ideas and solutions to make our services better for service users. And importantly, it's a great way of giving power back to the frontline staff so they can make the changes that matter to them the most. And doing so, they can improve their working life as well as patient care and experience. What is remarkable about this approach is that it lets us test changes on a small scale and use data to evidence if the changes are actually working. So, what is a driver diagram? In a nutshell, I'll say it's a tool that can be used to help plan improvement project activities. They're essentially another name for the classic tree diagrams, which are commonly used in operational research. You can also describe them as a simple visual display that outlines and logically connects an improvement aim that qualifies what better will look like, for who and by when. It also connects a small number of primary drivers that focus on the key components of the system or the main areas of influence that need to change to achieve the project's aim. They're often associated with processes, infrastructure, norms, which includes culture, and quite importantly, people. The primary drivers are then followed by secondary drivers that break the primary drivers down into natural subsections or processes. They provide more detail on where interventions should happen to positively influence the primary drivers. And lastly, we have the change ideas that run through all of the previous things. They are specific ideas that teams can test to see if they influence the secondary drivers and ultimately the aim of the whole project. Why use this tool? I would say it's a visual presentation of a team's theory of change for how an improvement goal might be achieved. It can aid in planning and team engagement. It can also be used to articulate what parts of the system need to change in which way, ensuring that everyone working on improving their system has a shared sense of why. And I think it can help teams work collaboratively and focus on changes that will impact most on the system, while avoiding spending time and resources on changes that will have the little least impact. It can definitely also help identify outcome and process measures for improvement work so the teams can tell whether their efforts are actually leading to improvement or not. Okay, we have talked about driver diagrams. Let's see what it looks like. As you can see, it's very simple and visual sort of a diagram, more or less like it's a plan on a page concept. Starts with the aim. There are a few primary drivers linked to the aim, then followed by secondary drivers for each of the primary drivers, and then followed by the change ideas, and all of them link back to the aim. Now, how can we describe an aim? The aim is an identified problem that a team wants to improve. The project aims should be very clear. It should be very specific, measurable, and they should be time bound. How I would describe the primary drivers is they are the big ticket theories. If these were addressed and improved, project teams would have the greatest chance of achieving their aim. Now, typically, most projects will have around 2 to 3 primary drivers, but that's not a hard and fast rule. You can have more. Now, secondary drivers would be the specifics of each primary driver. Now, they are related to the primary drivers and in a way that what would need to be put in place to influence the primary drivers. So again, we would say like each primary driver should have about 2 to 3 secondary drivers. Now, moving on to the change ideas. The specific ideas to address these are the specific ideas to address the secondary drivers. The change ideas will be tested using the PDSU cycles to see if they bring about an improvement. Now, you can have multiple change ideas for each secondary driver. So just to give you a small example, how it would work in a project is, aim could be to reduce my weight by losing 2 stone in 6 months. Yeah? And the primary driver for that could be decrease my calorie intake. The secondary driver would be reduce the volume of food eaten. And then the change idea would be weigh the food before cooking it. So that's how it simply works. Here's a helpful tip. Use these phrases to help frame your thoughts when developing your driver diagram. The prompts will help you focus and connect your theories about the problem and the possible change ideas you could test. Next, let's look at how do I make one. Now, developing a driver diagram is simple when you know how. But there's no single correct way of drawing a driver diagram, and there's no prescribed number of primary or secondary drivers or actions that can be included. But what is important here is that the diagram clearly shows the causal relationships between the projects, the hierarchy of drivers, and the aim. Driver diagrams are best done in a group as a group exercise. So you gather together the relevant stakeholders who have knowledge and different perspectives of the system you're working in. Start with your goal or aim. Make sure it is clearly defined and measurable. Think about what, how much, by when, why, so what. And then you brainstorm your potential drivers. So you can start by asking, to achieve our goal, the things we need to improve are ... Concentrate on generating ideas at this stage. Don't try to allocate the label of primary or secondary driver at this stage. Once you've completed the brainstorming, cluster the ideas to see if there are groups that represent a common driver. Make sure you use language like improve or decrease, and that each driver is clearly defined and is potentially measurable. At this stage, you may want to expand the groups as new ideas may come to mind during the clustering stage. Now you can begin to identify the links between the drivers and create the driver diagram format. Add projects, actions to the drivers. Finally, decide which drivers and projects/actions you want to prioritize and which you want to measure. Here's a helpful tip. Remember that your driver diagram works in 2 directions, helping you develop your theories into change ideas, that's the how question, as well as helping you focus on improvement efforts on the aim that you set out to achieve, that's the why question. So reading a diagram from left to right, starting with the aim and ending with the change ideas, it tells you the story of how you plan to achieve your improvement aim, taking you from a broad theory to the specific change ideas that the project team plans to test. So that's the how. Now, if you're reading your driver diagram from left to right, starting with the change ideas and ending with the aim, it helps teams focus the improvement efforts by reminding them of the project aim and the reason why you are testing change ideas in the first place. That's the why question. I find this quite useful when you're doing the driver diagram. Right, you know what driver diagrams are, how to use them, and how to draw one. So here are some top tips. Create your driver diagram with your change project's stakeholders. It has to be a collaborative effort. And do not forget your service users and patients. Involve them. You may also want to think about prioritizing the drivers by selecting some quick wins or by dismissing some other drivers that have relatively little impact. And there's this thing about driver diagrams that they evolve over the lifetime of an improvement project or a program. It's a live document, so you should be actually revisiting and reviewing them probably every 90 days or so you can get the maximum benefits from them.